I love that feeling of a fresh friggin' start. I do love it when the year ticks over, and even though my younger cynical self would have told me it's just another day, bro, my older, slightly less cynical self would tell him, no son, listen up. It is a nice opportunity for you to assess the year that you've just had and think about the changes that you want to make. And that is exactly what this video is going to be about. How to reinvent yourself in 2021. And just a quick disclaimer, like in all my videos, I'm not an expert. I'm just some dude with a friggin' YouTube account. So this is just what's worked for me. You can take the bits you like, cherry pick and make your own method, or you can follow it completely, but I obviously just want to mention that. So this method is something that I've been doing for the past 3 years now. It's a journaling exercise that I like to do around January 1st. And it's something that's, I don't know, it's fared pretty well. I like it, I love revisiting it, and it's made a lot of cool positive changes in my life. It's a journaling exercise and there are 4 parts. So for this task, you are going to need a notebook, a pen, and a couple of hours of your time. Alrighty, let's just dive right in. Part 1, assess the past year. What served you and what didn't? To kick things off, we're going to start with a summary of some of the key things that we did in 2020. The trick here is to not overthink it. You can keep adding stuff as you go through the exercise. It's just more of a glossy overview to get you into the mindset. So I'll use myself as an example throughout all of this so you can get a sense of how these exercises work. In my list, I've got weddings that I went to, because you see I am 30, and that is what we do. Going into lockdown, the wedding that I didn't have with Felicity, which got postponed due to said lockdown. Whole bunch of projects that I worked on, couple of the books I read, and life events, like turning 30, you see. In terms of length, if you're looking for a guideline, I usually end up with about 30 different dot points in this section. And now that we've got our list, it is time for our first bit of reflection, and that is with these 3 questions. And these are 3 questions that I've talked about on this channel before. They are, what excited me, what drained me of energy, and what did I learn? And it's funny, man, the more that I've asked myself these 3 questions over the years, the less variance I see in my answers to question 2. In any case, this is how I answer those questions. What excited me? Making videos that actually help people. Running, I ran more than ever this year. I think it's because I read that David Goggins book, Can't Hurt Me, and I'm pretty sure everybody who read this had the same reaction, where you're like, man, if he can run 100 miles on no training, I could run a couple. I could definitely run a couple. So I did, and it felt good. Getting out into nature always makes me excited, and working on Hump Wallace, the animated show that I'm making with a few friends of mine. So for what drained me of energy, alcohol and drugs. Anytime I slipped up, anytime that I found myself doing them again, I was so drained and full of shame, and I hated myself. And that's just a fact. The second thing was mindlessly scrolling on social media. Anytime that I'd find myself in a scroll, I would always feel like I just wasn't enough as a human. And finally, the pandemic. But that one's kind of out of my control. And then 3, what did you learn about yourself? I learned this past year that I get higher off denying a high than actually getting high. The second thing I learned was I'm kind of a grown-up now, I'm not a kid anymore, and I feel 10 times better when I act like it. And the final really big lesson that I learned is I am still yet to truly see what I'm capable of and truly see who I could be without my vices, which, spoiler alert, is something that I want to see in 2021. The purpose of this section is to get into words what you already feel. While most of us know intuitively to follow the things that energize us and leave the things that drain us, to have it written so clearly on the page just staring back at you really cements why we're making these changes. So with that written, it's time for part 2. Part 2, your ideal 2021. If you watch a lot of videos like this, you're probably pretty familiar with the concept of limiting beliefs. They're the beliefs that we have on our potential that don't let us exceed a certain cap. So if you've only ever seen people earn up to $80,000, you might think you can only ever earn up to $80,000. This, of course, is not true. And so for this section, I really need you to break that cap. Just let go of those expectations and those beliefs and just write. The question that we will be asking ourselves is, what does your ideal 2021 look like? You can either do this unstructured if you just feel like flowing, or you can do it structured, which is what I like to do. So these are the categories that I got from a website called yearcompass.com, who have some great journaling resources. The categories that they outline are personal life and family, work, studies and profession, belongings, relaxation, hobbies and creativity, friends and community, health and fitness, intellectual, emotional and spiritual, finances, and bucket list. Just write a couple of bullet points for each category, what you want, and just feel it, don't hold back. At this point in our exercise, we should have a pretty wild and ambitious list. So what we're gonna do is add a little bit of reality to our idealism. We're gonna take the top 5 points, and these are gonna become our top 5 goals for 2021. Just find the 5 that matter to you the most. And I'd really recommend refining your language here, using words that excite you or energize you, making them really specific and also making them really easy to understand. So when you go back and revisit them, you can be filled with the sense that you have when you wrote them. I'll give you my top 5 as an example. To be super flexible, strong, and completely sober. Basically become a yoga lord / endurance athlete. It's ambitious, I know, but we can do it. To make 52 videos that actually help and impact people. To get the Hump Wallace pilot finished and sold, or at least in the process of being sold. To get married if and when the travel ban lifts, so my family can come. And finally, to finish another big secret project that I can't mention on this channel yet. So now that we've got our ideal 2021 and our top 5 most important goals, it is time for part 3. Part 3, personal growth and identity. Now that we've got our 5 key goals, we're going to stress test them individually. So for each goal, we are going to ask 7 different questions. I'm going to do this in the table. I'll put my goals on the rows and the questions up on the columns. The questions I like to ask are, why do you want this? Who would you have to be in order to hit this goal? What would you have to say no to? What would you have to say yes to? When it gets hard, how will you stay the course? Why do you deserve this? I'll show you an example. I'll use my first goal, my fitness goal, because that's probably the most widely applicable. I think most of us have fitness goals, I would assume. I'm not too sure. Everybody's different. Hey, that's crazy. Isn't that cool? But I'll take mine, to be a sober yoga lord / endurance athlete. Basically, be flexible and strong, but I'm using the words that excite me. Why do you want this? I want this so I can feel self-respect. After too many years of drugs and alcohol and poor mental health, I want to feel like I not only love my body, but get to see the ripple effect that fitness has on the rest of my life. Who would you have to be in order to hit this goal? This part is about identity. And just as an aside, James Clear in his book Atomic Habits had a really good point about this, where he says if you're trying to quit smoking, don't say that you're trying to quit smoking, identify as somebody who doesn't smoke, because we as humans will do anything to uphold the person that we think we are. So to hit this goal, I would have to be an actual athlete who loves discipline. What would you have to say no to? Alcohol, drugs, poor sleep, taking the easy option. What would you have to say yes to? Daily yoga, lots of running, lots of weight training. When it gets hard, how will you stay the course? I'll revisit inspiring athletes like David Goggins. I'll train with my friends and I'll use rewards. And why do you deserve this? Because I deserve to feel incredible in my body. That last question is designed just to prompt a little bit of self-love. Hope you find yours. The purpose of this section is to connect to your goals on a much deeper level than just wanting something. It's to put them in terms of fulfillment and self-respect and the long-term contentment that becoming this person is going to bring. And with that, it's time for our final section, part 4. Part 4, ongoing habits, macro and micro. All these words in our journal are great, but they run 2 big risks. The first risk is that we'll write them down, get really high off inspiration, and do nothing. The second risk is we'll write all this stuff down, get really excited, and actually act for about 2 weeks until we fall back into our old habits. How do we make sure this change is ongoing? How do we make it last? In this method, which once again is just what works for me, I've found that the best way to make this stuff last is by focusing on 2 parts, the macro and the micro. So in the macro, we are talking about habit tracking. It's probably a concept that you're familiar with. So from those goals, we know that there are going to be habits that lead us to getting those goals. Let's say one of your goals is to write a book. You know that a habit that you're going to have to form is to write. I'll use the Anne Lamott standard, 2 crappy pages a day. So every day you've got to write 2 crappy pages. And we'll represent those 2 crappy pages with a cross on the calendar. The idea is to not break the chain of crosses, or however many crosses that it is that you want. If you want 3 a week, the idea is to get 3 a week. You get the idea. It's quite simple. The way that I like to make habit trackers work for me is to build in rewards. So something at 3 days, something at 3 weeks, something at 3 months, stuff like that. Some cool numbers for you if you want like a little hot tip would be January 12th, because that is statistically when most people give up their New Year's resolution, which is bonkers. And another cool one, this is a bit more like in the realm of pop psych. I know there's a lot of kind of contention about this exact number, but it's still a fun number to put into your habit tracking calendar, is the 66-day mark, which is allegedly when you have formed a habit. Now, the micro stuff, this is a little bit trickier, but weirdly it's my favorite section. So the micro stuff comes from this one quote, which I believe is a Zen Buddhist quote. Don't quote me on that. It is, how you do anything is how you do everything. What I interpret that quote to mean is the way that you act in tiny situations will be the way that you act in bigger situations. So this is partially where that cold shower phenomenon comes from. If you want to be better in your life, better at having difficult conversations, or better at the gym, or better at whatever, you can start by having cold showers. And by doing that on a micro level, you start to build up the identity capital that I am somebody who does things that are uncomfortable regardless of the temperature. You know, that kind of stuff. Another one might be if you are procrastinating, you might instill the 1-minute rule. If something takes less than 1 minute, do it immediately. If you see a dirty dish, do it immediately. And that will hopefully spiral up until you can do your work immediately. You get the idea. Basically, living these goals down to the micro level in every aspect of your life. I know that sounds a bit gnarly, but like I said, this is just what's worked for me. So that's my journaling exercise. That's what I do. I hope you liked it. If it's not what works for you, just cherry pick the stuff that you do like and make your own method. The idea of this video is more just to encourage positive changes, because I think that growth is really kind of like what we're here for, man. Yeah. Anyway, that's it from me. Let me know what topics you want me to cover this year, by the way, in the comment section. And if you are the type of person who also wants to be held to your goals, feel free to chuck them in this comment section so you can revisit them. Otherwise, let me know what you thought and have a beautiful, beautiful year. See you next week. Catch ya.